Family, school is in session.
And teachers are talking. Join us
as we love to entertain, enlighten, and inform you of the exciting things
that make teachers talk.
Let's have a conversation
about teaching practices and loving those pumpkins.
That sounds good. We can talk about anything.
And don't forget,
we encourage you to listen
when a teacher talks.
That's right. We encourage you to listen when a teacher talks. We want to thank the Bermuda Union of Teachers, founded in 1919 by Reverend Rufus Stovall, Miss Ardell Tucker, Miss Edith Crawford, and Miss Matilda Crawford. That's right.
Sponsoring this hour in which we love to entertain, enlighten, and inform you of all the things that make teachers talk.
That's right. We are now on Facebook Live. You can reach us on the Teacher Talk page. We are here every Tuesday and Thursday at 5:30 p.m. Family, school is in session.
And teachers are talking.
That's right, Michelle. We are still talking. We are on this live platform here on Facebook and then later on YouTube. So, you know, I am going through changes, Michelle, realizing what I say is being recorded. You could see my face now. People say, oh, that's the face to the voice, but it's a new face. I'm giving them new face. This is the COVID effect. I'm getting good comments, Michelle. That's right, I'm getting good comments. So I'm excited. How are you today, Michelle?
I'm good, Dean. I'm good. Wrapping it up, school and all of that. We have intervention weeks and we're doing review and wrapping it up. Another school year is almost done.
Awesome. Intervention is good. Intervention, I must say, is good because there are times we may need an intervention, Michelle. We may need an intervention. How were your classes today? Did you have any?
I did. I had my S2s first thing in the morning, 9:30 at them. They were doing some review on Google Forms, another platform.
Oh, excellent. Because I know you are doing your classes through Google Form. Google?
Well, no, the Google platform. So one of the applications is Google Forms. Yeah. You guys will be moving towards it soon. I see it.
Yes, I see it also. I see it also.
Yeah.
And, you know, as we mentioned before, I was introduced to it because I was losing things. My computer was just doing things with the work that I did, and I had difficulty finding it. I lost some work. So someone said, Dean, if you use Google, it will save it for you as we go along. That's right.
It saves automatically.
It saves automatically, yes. So my classes was exciting today, Michelle. We are doing projects, as I mentioned, and I showed them my little video, you know, the one that I did of me running. You know, I just did this and I just showed it to them, Michelle, about the Bermuda Day. So and they were like, what are you talking about? This was my little Bermuda Day thing.
Run.
I did my running.
Long day today. Look,
you know, not really. They thought I ran the whole way. I showed different areas. Of course, this was at the AM. I had to pour water on me to make it look like I ran the whole way. You know, and there were times, let me see if I can find something.
Do it on a...
Like here, I just showed them this, like I was actually running the race. It was talking about virtual celebrating inheritance. But as you see, Michelle, my car was in every single clip. So I'm like,
you put a lot of thought in there.
I sure did. I told them I ran everything they saw me run. I didn't record driving from spot to spot, but you know, because we were looking at the challenge of not being able to meet physically together to celebrate our Bermudian heritage. and realizing there's still a need to celebrate and to celebrate virtually, right? So I know people are probably saying, now there's two are just talking and there are two other people just looking at them. What is going on here? So Michelle, you take it away. Let our listening audience know, our guest. You know, it's so easy now. It's like, okay, who do we have on here? But then you see the names clear as day written under our faces. So Michelle, you take it away. Our guest for this evening.
Our guests for this evening are two of my favorite people.
Yes.
I have Dr. John Duncan and Shayna Duncan. Soon I'll be introducing them as Doctors Duncan.
Very nice. Doctors Duncan.
Good
evening,
Duncan.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, guys.
Talk audience. Thanks for inviting me.
Listen,
Invitation.
when I invited the two of you, a lot of what's going on was not going on. So it's probably going to change the direction of the conversation significantly. I invited the both of you because I know that education is very important to the both of you. Take it very seriously. It's something that you both value highly. And I just would love to just have you two share some of your thoughts, philosophies, ideas surrounding education. And just to the time, this time right here with what's going on, what has been exposed. I know it's a lot, but we'll definitely be able to narrow it down and to some specifics. Just how do you think the value of education has changed? Should it go in a different direction now? I mean, one thing, we had the COVID-19, now we have the protest.
Yes,
it's a lot. So just narrowing it down. Let's do like the softer things right now. How are the both of you doing? Let's do that first.
Well, ladies before gentlemen, so I will acquiesce.
So how am I doing? Like, to be honest, I am righteously indignated, okay? The truth be told, right? I really, really am. And so to me, what is going on in society has to affect everybody on some level. Whether you're conscious of the effect or not, it does play an effect. And so for me, I am consciously affected by this. I actually sent a message to a Black man. He used to be one of my professors, just to let him know I'm thinking about him and his Black son. You know, I sent messages to my nephews, like, I'm thinking of you, you Black man. And not just today or just right now, like all the time. But when things like this happen, what's happening now, it affects us, right? It's what we call this trauma. And for us as people, it's always going on. We've learned how to compartmentalize, but that we should stop. So we can really affect and make some changes. So how I'm doing, I'm fighting the power, okay?
Yeah.
So how are you doing, John?
Well, you know, I am in a very contemplative and reflective space as a Black man within our community, and just being a Black man in general. You know, when you look at the victimization and the stigmatizing and marginalization of the Black male or Black males globally, that is perpetually manifesting itself on so many levels, it becomes so disturbing to a degree. And you really become reflective and you start to say, you know, what is my value and space in the world? You know, you really reflect on, what am I here to do? How am I here to affect change?
Yeah.
You know, because we can no longer pretend that what is isn't. Like, it's very glaring. You know, so we have to really reflect and accept the fact that our society has changed, and we really have to look at what's going on in our community. You know, there are certain groups that have an advantage over other groups.
Right.
And we have to admit that. You know, we can no longer pretend and turn a blind eye that that is not the truth, because the truth will always set you free. And if we want to be free, then we have to accept the truth.
Mm.
Say that again. Say that last part again one more time.
The truth will set you free. So if you want to be free, you have to accept the truth.
Come on, Frida.
All right now.
Yeah.
Now, do you find that we are in a space of accepting truth because of the coronavirus pandemic? Where, because for me, I look at it as we do better because we know better. We have to adjust the way that we live because of the pandemic. So that has put us in a space of looking at things differently, or putting me in a space of looking at things differently. So do you think that this pandemic has anything to do with where people are on this incident that we see happening in the United States?
I would have to say yes, because I think what the coronavirus has done, it has made us all vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so our guard is down, right? Our guard is down because it was forced to be let down. You know, we had no control over this pandemic that happened. It happened, and so we've become vulnerable, right? So we have to accept. I think we've been forced to accept certain limitations, certain things in terms of how we now spend our money. You know, how we now spend our social time. Just so many things have shifted and changed. And so we have become vulnerable on so many different levels. So I just think that we've been forced to enter a different type of space. Yeah.
What about you, Shayna? I'm sorry, John.
I concur with John, and I actually also think what this pandemic has done, it has affected people who are typically unaffected by some of the ills of society, right? So like in your social construct or your social parameters in life, you are afforded the blockage from some of the harm that comes to the most vulnerable. But because this goes beyond class, it goes beyond race. Well, you know, there's only one race, the human race. There's different ethnicities, but it seeps beyond that. Yes, it affects certain people more, but we understand that's from some systemic structures. However, it's affecting people all over, right? And so I think how now, because it is affecting people who are normally not affected, you know, that old adage that say he who feels knows. So now more people are knowing what it is to be affected by some of the ills of society.
What I've noticed, what is quite apparent, there's a lot of non-Blacks who have joined the protest more than ever before that I've ever seen. And I was just wondering, by what the both of you had said, that is probably part of the factor, because everyone is being affected by it. Like no one could stay home and go, oh, it's just them, it's not us. But I know there's a lot of different factors why I think a lot of non-Blacks have joined it. But I think it's almost like, if you can do this, what about me? Am I next?
Right. Well, for one thing, Michelle,
I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, but when you think, Michelle, there are 40 million Americans that are unemployed, right? That's a whole lot of people that ain't of African descent, okay? So, you know, like people are thinking about things differently, or people have time. Is another
right. That was the other thing. No one has a job to go home. You know what I mean? It's not like, okay, I gotta knock off because I gotta wake up 9 o'clock. Well, not wake up, but I've got to make my job at 9 o'clock. That's what I mean to say. So I don't have anywhere to go tomorrow. So hey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah.
Yeah. And to that point, Michelle, and as a Black male, you can develop a bit of suspicion regarding milk, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's all well and good. That's all well and good that all of a sudden you come in. But for a Black man that's been feeling it for so long, you can think, how authentic and real is that? Is that like a real action? Is that kind of like a make-believe action? What is that really? It's almost like you second guess, and I don't know if I know, and you should really judge people on the merit on what you see, right? So you should really have pure thoughts and righteous thoughts. We get that little Christian perspective if you're a believer.
Yeah.
Pure thoughts and clean thoughts. But at the same token, since you are in human form, you kind of wonder and you say, oh, how genuine is that? You know, so.
And I know it's different from the Black male perspective. It's, as you mentioned, it's something that we fight every day. I know for me, there are normally conversations I do not participate in. There are normal things I don't watch, and more so now with being sheltered in place and being home, the stress of the coronavirus and trying to stay alive. And this, the recent death has really affected me differently than before. And it is harder to sit and watch. So I don't sit and watch. And like you said, you try to come with that Christian, treat everyone the same, but you do have your guard up in instances, and you do have your guard up waiting for something to happen because you are a Black man. And now even me with the beard, it puts it in a whole different dynamic because I'm being looked at different in so many ways because of the beard. You know, so I know it's extra difficult for me, and sometimes I don't even like to say it because I don't feel what the Americans are feeling, because I don't live in America. I don't live, I have a quote unquote better life. So there are times I don't even discuss it for fear of limiting the effect of it, because from my area, I cannot speak to it as those going through it can speak to it, if you can understand what I'm talking about. So that's my struggle with the whole thing, not getting into conversations for fear of being said, okay, you are just diminishing it.
I think, Dean, I think we need to move beyond that, right? I think those silent thoughts and those silent fears have eroded the humanity of us, right? It is through conversation and discussion, and we can disagree, but if you stay within your head thought, then you live as this is the right way to be. And if you never dialogue with someone else who has a different perspective, you never move your margin. You know, your ideologies never move, right? And so I think we need to do a better job. I know that it is possible, if we're trying to really do some things differently in society, to move outside of those places that makes us very comfortable because of fear of this or fear of that. Like, listen, fear is going to always be with us. We have to move beyond that and start having these honest dialogue. Like, if you are offended by something I say, Michelle and John know this. Sorry. Those are not my intentions, right? I really work at not having my motives and my intentions to offend. However, if you are offended, then let's have a conversation about you being offended, because I'm offended that you're offended by me speaking my truth. I'm offended that you're offended. You understand? So we can go into the rhetoric of that. But again, unless we are open, we'll never move the margin. And I think that's education, right? Because education is about the culture. It is about the experiences. Now, school is something different. That's maintaining the status quo. Okay. But education is about empowering us. It is about helping us. It is about moving margins as humanity, right? We don't have to agree, but where we can have our differences and still live free, in my opinion.
So is this the start of educating our young people, and Dr. John, our young Black man, differently?
Well, I'm gonna say two things. Yes, from the standpoint of anytime there's an acute level of I don't want to call it disaster, but some type of dilemma, it always comes to some type of talking point, right? Because you're gonna want to discuss the most prevalent issues that's occurring in your community. However, I kind of feel that we have to really drill deep and focus the conversation. I kind of feel like this. Let me be very candid, if I may.
Come on, John.
I'm to the point where, you know, having conversations amongst my own Black males and my own Black peers, I'm to a point where I don't want to talk about racism anymore. I want Asians and the white people to talk about racism. I want them to talk about it. Like, how do you feel that you have had an advantage for X amount of years and that the Black males have been marginalized? How do you feel about that? You start having, we know how we feel. We've said it for years and centuries. We've said it already. You know, and I'm at a point where, you know, I would really like for a lot of these conversations to take place with persons who have been privileged.
Well, you know what? What's interesting, I just want to jump onto that point. I had a memory 2 years ago. It was a senior class, and we were discussing the movie Black Panther. And I find that a lot of young people today do not feel that there is even an issue. And I'm just talking about like the classroom. They don't really feel that there is an issue. They couldn't understand why, and these are children of color, and one of them wasn't. They couldn't understand what was the fuss, why people made a fuss over this movie, Black Panther. They thought it was ridiculous because they felt that color didn't matter. So to the point is, with our young people, some of our young people not even seeing it as an issue or even a discussion to something to talk about, how can we even transfer that over even to someone who is white or who is privileged? Like, how do we even bridge that gap if our own young people don't even see that there is even a problem? I mean, that was 2 years ago. I don't know what the thought process is now on that.
That's a very good point, Michelle. I would have to co-sign on that to a degree, but I was engaged in conversation with some young man today. And, believe it or not, they are very aware of the dichotomous socialization process that exists between the haves and have-nots. They're very aware. However, when you feel so disempowered that you don't have a voice, shut down and you say, what's the use? No one's listening to me anyway. No changes are really going to happen. It's almost like that the people that say, why vote? Like a voteless people is a hopeless people. We know that, right? But a lot of people say, well, what's the point of voting? You know, so I think a lot of our boys feel so disempowered that they feel like they don't even have a voice or belong. So like, what's the point?
Yes. And I agree with you. I agree with you, John. And I'd like to move that a little further as well. Like, again, engagement has to be continuous and not in isolation. And I think sometimes as older people or you know, like working in mature adults, we don't do a good job of amalgamating stories for children to understand the continuity of it from one generation to the next, right? And again, that's education, because that's a cultural piece that we have to do a better job of showing them, right? Not just when a movie comes out or not just when a riot happens. And it's not a riot, it's a murder, right? That's what happens, murder, right? And so, but the continuity of that, right? So John can tell you, I do it every day. I have those discussions every day, right? Michelle, you know that. I do it in the grocery stores. I do it in the restaurant, and I am there to educate. And so if you did not know, you're gonna know today, right? Again, that's how I move through the world, and I'm clear with that, right? You don't have to like it, but again, did you see what you just did? What made you think that you can get in front of me? Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want you to be sorry. I want you to be aware of your behavior, right? Because an apology, they've been conditioned to say, oh, I'm sorry. You know, Amanda Cooper got on after she blatantly, intentionally told the Black man, Mr. Cooper, what she was going to do. And then she apologizes. That doesn't mean anything. It needs to be the change of bad behavior. And so that's another thing that we need to do, even with each other. That's about it, the accountability. And so then that helps with us not being as marginalized, because if we're holding each other accountable. And when I say each other, I mean everybody in society. Right. And everybody has a responsibility. It shouldn't just be the activists. It shouldn't just be the politician. It should be us as community people that we're holding the politicians. No, you need to change this law, because this law right here, this affects our children, right? We need to say that to the school board members, right? We need to say that to them. Don't let them get away with that. You're voted in. You serve me. I pay your salary, right? And that's the empowerment. And I think that needs to happen at a very early age. And that's the difference between schooling and education. School doesn't teach us that. School is a way to disempower Blacks, period, and more so Black men, right? Because John, your research talks about that if you miss the child by the 3rd grade, the likelihood of keeping them engaged is highly unlikely. So if we're losing our Black boys by the time they're in 3rd grade or primary 4, they have a long path still in this system called school. That's not education. What are they learning that helps them to feel good about who they are and where they came from, right? So I think that's what the kind of discussions we need to have with them. So not just movies or isolated incidents, but like as a continuum, that this is everyday life. This is how we live. And that's the empowerment, right?
And ideally, it calls for a paradigm shift in our thinking and in our behavior. And we have to ask ourselves the right questions. Are we willing to make that shift? I'm not talking about just making a shift because, just saying we're making a shift by implementing programs. You know, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a real mental shift that moves us to another spot or another place of what it means for us to be truly empowered and educated in the 21st century.
So what does it mean to be empowered? But I haven't forgotten the other point that you were making about more white people should have the conversation. So that right there, what does that look like? To have more people discuss the topic of racism. And then number 2, can you address the empowerment piece? What does that look like? Because a lot of people don't know what that looks like. What does that look like? What does that feel like? What does that smell like? What does empowerment, what is it?
Well, I think Shayna touched a few minutes ago when she was talking about knowing who you are.
Okay.
Because if you don't really know who you are, then like how are you living your life? How do you identify as a person, as a Black person? Where is your value? Where is your pride? Like, do you really understand that we were kings and queens? And what does that really mean to you? Do you really understand that hundreds and hundreds of years ago, we were not given the opportunities to be educated? That was not a part of the agenda for us as a Black people. So then, do you really value? And so you're here now. Do you really value education? If you don't value education, well, let's have the discussion. Let's slow this track. Let's slow this train down. Understanding as to why you think that education is not valuable.
See, now, John, that's where I differ with you, right? Because that's not education. I say that's where I differ with you, right? That's not education. That's schooling. That's schooling. Yes.
Yeah.
I love this disagreement.
Oh, we do that very well.
Very well. Yeah. But it's something that I am just intrigued, just even making that distinction, education and schooling. You mentioned earlier about schooling is there to bring us down, put us in the status quo, make us believe what they want us to believe, those who put schooling in place, and education being about that serious transformational change. So just even making that distinction, I think for some is earth-shattering, because it's a point now, better, so now you have to do better. And that's what 2020 has been for me. It's like finding out those things that we did not know before, or we didn't keep in our conscious psyche. So I'm glad you said earlier, remove that fear, because fear is always going to be there. To move forward, have those conversations, and let's have a conversation about it. Because I'm like you with like certain things you say, I don't purposely intend to offend you, but now I have a saying, it's like, oh, well, let's talk about why you're offended, because I'm offended that you're offended by something that I said. So we're gonna have to have more conversation, so I could just make that full shift into, I feel like I know better. Even just by this conversation that we've had, I feel like that, you know, I know better.
So Dean,
Well, what is offense?
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying that let's just break that down.
Right.
What is offense? Because offense could be defined, you know, differently. So let's set that up. What is offense?
And so my point with that, an offense is something that we do, that someone does to us, and we take it in a way in which they didn't intend, but that doesn't harm us. No, it's a perceived harm, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I say I'm offended that you're offended. So meaning we're at the same place, and what next, right?
Yes.
So like, let's move beyond that, because we're at the same position. Offense, okay, equal. Now what next, right?
Sometimes I don't even think sometimes people are really offended. I think sometimes people use that as an excuse or
that's my point. That's
not to deal with the issue.
That's my
You know
point.
what I mean?
Okay.
Yes.
It's easier to say I'm offended because you don't have the responsibility to address the issue.
You don't have to.
So
John, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
That's a full stop. When some people use offense, that's a full stop.
Yeah,
that means we're not carrying.
I'm
It's
not
not
having
a
a
comma.
conversation because you offended me. I'm not having a conversation with you.
Right.
Well,
right.
Tell the truth. You really don't want to deal with the issue, or you don't have the answer. Question. Like, we're not honest, right?
Right.
So, an offense. Is it really? Are you really offended?
And that's why I think we got to challenge each other beyond that. Like, because you're offended, I'm offended that you're offended. So we're at the same place. So what are we going to do now? Yeah. Right?
Because the issue still exists. Yes. I still pose my question and it's unanswered.
Yes. Yeah. And so I want to just say this, because I want you to understand, I did not think of schooling and education as different. That is something I've gotten from Dr. Asa Hilliard in his book Saba, and Dr. Suja in 1994 talked about that. So it's not me. And that's why it's important that we read.
Yes. Yeah.
We read, and we read books from people who look like us, so they can empower. Talk about empowerment. It's nothing like picking up a piece of information from somebody like you, right? They talk about empirical data. That's empirical data, okay? And so then you tell people. So then when you tell a child that Dr. Duncan wrote this book, like, you're an author? So it puts something that is perceived to be for other people right in your circle, right? And I think we need to do a better job, because we've always done amazing things. When people will say, oh, this is the first Black, like, please, we have always been doing things. We've always been the first. Because you don't recognize it doesn't mean it. That means you choose not to recognize, but we've always been doing great things. And so that's the part that I'm talking about, connecting our education. And so then that's why we have to move beyond the offense. Because if we stay in the offense, we don't get this information. Yeah.
And our history doesn't start at being enslaved.
All right.
Because a lot of people think that that's where our history started.
It's like the Big Bang.
I'm throwing the question out. Whose responsibility is it when it comes to educating ourselves about ourselves? Because on this program, we get calls from people that, oh, you know what? Bermudian history is not taught in school, or African history is not taught in school. You know, we don't have, whose ultimate responsibility is it to educate us about us?
I don't think it's one laser answer for that. I think a lot of responsible. I think parents are responsible. I think teachers are responsible. I think the church is responsible. I think everybody's responsible. I really I don't think it's one entity that's responsible. I think it's multiple streams of persons who are responsible for the empowerment of us as a people. You know, I don't think it's one person, like necessarily say, oh, it's the teachers, or it's the parents. You know, I think it's,
yeah.
You know,
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree. And I say us, right? I mean, us as society, right? Like, I think it is unfair to us, for us, that we will leave something so monumental in the hands of somebody else. Like, what? What?
Well, we get that question a lot. Teachers get blamed for not educating other people's children about themselves. Like that's a common question we get all the time. Well, do we have that in the curriculum? Do we have, like, the buck is always passed to us as teachers or the education system to educate about ourselves, like not realizing it's vast. Like it's something that should be talked at the kitchen table. Like it should be something that, you know, it's not just, oh, is it in the curriculum? So what you can do for the rest of your life, you're gonna fight for it to be in the curriculum?
No, Michelle, I think it needs to be in the curriculum, right?
No, I'm not saying that it's not. No, I'm not saying that it's not. But I'm just saying that is it solely responsible on the school system for it? That's all. That's what I'm saying.
And I don't think it's solely yet. If you think about in terms of time, if you think about the amount of time that children are in this institution called the system of school, right? I think it's a high premium on those who have been educated or colleged to ensure that they're passing on information, because all it is information, and that we need to do a very good job of that. I think as educators, we need to stop giving the minimum and expecting the maximum. I'm not talking about.
That means we have to educate ourselves.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna type that.
Because we have to educate ourselves, because it's only as good as the messenger at this point in time. Like, say, for example, I'll give you an example for my subject, mathematics. I've said this on the program before. I make a point to say just because this theorem is named after this person doesn't mean that that person was the one that actually came up with that theorem. You see what I mean? Because many of the mathematics, most people think, if they're not really into it, think that the Greeks were the people that discovered mathematics or put it together. So you know, you have all the bust of all these Greek philosophers, mathematicians, Renaissance men. So we're inundated with those images, and we don't realize that no, it went back further. Actually, they were the ones that sat at the feet of the educators in Kemet.
Yes.
You see what I mean? Like, so those kind of things. Now, I can bring that to the table because I've educated myself about that. So it's beyond the curriculum, is who is actually delivering the curriculum and who can add to the curriculum.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Yes.
But my thoughts are looking at, so for example, we see people who are disenfranchised, right? And much of it is what we see in the media is about the looting. Now, do you think the looting takes away from the protest, or do you think the looting is like a byproduct of the protest?
I think it is something.
What's your thoughts on the looting?
I think it is something that the media focus on to take the attention off what the issues are. So again, like a fence, right? As long as you focus on the looting and you give very little attention to the root cause, which is police brutality, right? And again, we recognizing how powerful the media is, and then not being distracted by the rabbit holes that's created, right? Okay, the truth of the matter is, as an American, the truth of the matter is, in my opinion, the looting happened weeks ago when they created the stimulus package, right? And it was to help those who were suffering. And you only learn that it was those big businesses that got the majority of the money. That's looting, but we don't call it that. You see, but then we're upset when people are breaking in stores. Oh, now it's a problem because it affects you. But as long as a Black man is getting killed and is filmed in broad daylight and a young Black guy is running down the street and he's shot in broad daylight, that's not a problem because it doesn't affect you, right? So let's talk about what looting is. They got to rebuild. Those are buildings. We've got to talk about investing in people. Those are things. Those are objects. They don't breathe. But again, knowing who we are culturally, that's what they value. Okay? And a Black mother values her son, and a Black father values his son. And so it's a value system. So that's my take on that.
I think the whole looting, the question on looting is a microcosm of the problem, right? You have to look at it on a macro level.
Yes.
What the real issues are, like what I said before. I mean, to me, I'm not necessarily going to say I agree with people busting up windows and taking from their own community, or whatever. But my thing is, that's pretty logical to me. If you're not kind of dealing with the root of the problem, that probably might happen if you keep putting band-aids on racism and saying, oh, we had a race forum. And it's pretty logical to me that it's going to come oozing out like a bad sore or a bad wound. It just seems like a natural progression to me. So I'm not unduly upset about it. Do I agree with it? But it is happening. It's happening because it's taking a natural, progression in terms of you're not dealing with the root.
Right.
That's what happens as a result. And I want to say that it's probably not going to end anytime soon because we're in a different era and millennials just operate totally differently. In our era, we probably say, you know what, enough looting already. But millennials are saying, turn up.
And then now and John, to pull on that, they have social media to help them, right? We're going to do this at this time. We're going to do this at that time. They have the world at their disposal like this. We didn't have that, right?
Right.
We didn't have that. And so do I agree with the looting? No. Right? I don't, but I understand.
Yeah.
Because it is we're talking about the what, not the why. And I think when we move from that, but again, that's a distraction, like I'm offended. And so I think for me, it's about the degree of consciousness that we want to engage in, right? And so, I'll say to Jonna and to Michelle, like I'm upping up my consciousness, right? I'm no longer going to act like this is not a reality for somebody. It might not be to me, but it is to somebody. And if I care about other people, then I'm going to try to do something. I probably can't do a whole lot. Again, we all have personal power. Dr. Maya Angelou says this: you use your power according to how you acknowledge it inside yourself. Determine and set your goals and know why you want to go there. That is in my office. I quote that every day. And I say, I have power, right? And I'm going to use it in this way. And so if we all understood our level of power and our level of consciousness and work in tandem with that, we can get some things done. Dean, you're smiling at me.
I'm just absolutely loving the nuggets that you are putting in my psyche right now. Because earlier I was going to ask you about the books that you're reading and drop some knowledge, but you are doing that. And I think what's also going through my mind is Bermuda's motto is Kufata Farant, whether the fates may lead us. And I always say, no, I don't want where they may lead us. No, I need to chart my own path. And I think it's a psyche that Bermudians have been in for too long. We have been conditioned to think we are another world, when in fact we are not. And it has directed the way that we act. But I do see things different because of the closing of the world. through the internet, through social media, through contacts, through Bermudians moving out of Bermuda into other areas. I see a shift in how the younger generation are handling things that in my generation we were told to be quiet about. It didn't affect us. No, we cannot do that. This is Bermuda. Why would you think we would want, because even thinking about tourism, why would you even want to have Carnival Cruise Line in Bermuda? That is nothing that Bermuda wants to be associated with. And then look at it now, we have the Carnival cruise ships coming all the time. So I'm just amazed at the knowledge that you are dropping, and it is clear and to the point that these are some of the things that we need to do. We need to sit under people who are educating themselves on Black history, the Black heritage, the Black essence of what it represents. So I'm just sitting here amazed, and I'm just loving it. I'm just loving it. You said one thing that really, really, really is going to stick with me. As educators, we have to stop giving the minimum and expecting the maximum. So that's something I'm taking from this conversation now. It's like, I'm just excited as we are talking. Excited as we are talking. Yes.
Now, Jean, full disclosure, you know, she's creating all these books and authors, but she's on the cusp of writing her dissertation. And I remember those days 8 years ago. So she's fresh, and she's on point.
Awesome.
Of course, and
reading,
you know,
her PhD studies that's taken place, but it's good to be knowledgeable about people and share that knowledge.
And thank you, John. And that's the thing of education, right? Like for me, it's not just getting a degree, like at this age, but it is about empowering me with this information, this knowledge, so that I can pass it on. I have a goal, and my goal is to ensure that I do a good job of helping Black women who look like me to understand that according to the numbers of Black women with PhDs, it's less than 2%, right? So what can we do to move that number, right? And as Black people, it's less than 4%. What can we do? That's just a benchmark they've set. We can do that. You know, we don't have so many because they kept us out of it. Yeah. And so let's bust these doors open, right? And so John could tell you, he's like, honey, get through the program. I'm like, I'm not getting through the program. I'm making a difference in this program. Now, of course, I'm challenging every professor. Yes, I am. Because nobody has knowledge.
And in some civilizations, you weren't finished with school until you were 40 years old. You weren't even considered a master of anything. Like you just started on your path of mastery at 40 years old. Right. So a lot of the things that we're doing now is like a fast food line. Yeah. You understand? Like before, you sat at a master's feet. Yeah. You literally sat and you learned your craft. Correct. And you understood your craft, and it wasn't rushed. Right. And it wasn't about your feelings being hurt. Right. It was about respect of the person that came before you. You know, and a lot of us don't realize that that's where we come from. Yes. Right. You know, we come from that. Yes. You know, like those things were definitely valued. So it's like we have to realize that taking your time and marinating in things and, you know, really mastering the craft, like all of those things that have been lost. Yeah. And I think that's what the value system, things we've devalued, a lot of things that are really should be important. But just with the whole thing, like the time, it's like everything has to be seem like we have to squash it or we got to condense it in such a short period of time, not realizing that we really need to go a little bit deeper. Yeah. A little bit wider. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing about education is that, you know, we should always be expanding and learning and growing. Yeah. It's not like a final stop. Yeah. So I finally arrived. So I'm finished my doctoral studies now. I never need to open up another book. Why not? Right. You know, like, what do you mean? Like, I don't, you know, you should always be expanding your mind to learn something else. Correct. grow in this area that I'm proficient in, the world's always changing and evolving. So what knowledge can I bring to this context that I can teach someone else? So as we look at education as a stop, you stop here and you're finished. You're never finished.
Right.
You're always learning. You're always learning. So that's what I was talking about earlier in terms of making a shift. It's like, I know for us, part of our culture is, go away to college, get a degree, and come back and work, pay your bills, buy a house. And that whole aspect of learning gets lost somewhere. No, you're educated. So if you're educated, what are you learning while you're paying your mortgage? While you're, moving to higher levels in your job, but what are you learning along the journey? I think that needs to be shifted to find that space of what it means to be a lifelong learner. I know we say the cliche, oh, I'm a lifelong learner, but are you really? Right. What are you learning? What are you learning today? What did you learn today that you can impart to someone else?
Right. Yeah, that's good. That's good. And with that, John, I think, and with the learning, what are you sharing?
What are you sharing?
Right?
Yeah.
We've gotten into this place in society, like, like we are the vacuum holders of knowledge, where it is just to help and to progress our community, right? Like, and so I actually wanted to stop and give a shout out because, I spent most of my adulthood in Bermuda, and it was like Dr. Miriam Wade Smith, better known as Mother Afua to me, who was giving me books and put me on this path of getting a PhD way before it became a thought solidified to get it done for me. And so that's the progress, right? Where we don't just do it for ourselves, but we are encouraging and empowering others to do it and to push them further, right? Like, this is what I did, and I got this so I can help you, right? Like as servants. Now here, you take yours and you eat, right? And now when you're fed, right, then you can feed somebody else.
The educational communion.
Did you hear what he said?
No.
Say it again.
It's like educational communion. You know how you have church.
Oh, okay, yes.
Played around. It's like educational communion.
It's so funny, right?
But
it's so funny that you took that as you took that as your image. And my image was that mother bird that would chew the food up and then would pass the food in her mouth, and she would literally give the food to her young. Right. So it's so interesting, the images that we got from that thought.
Interesting, right? Different thoughts. It's interesting that you mentioned that before I had my master's, I just, as you were saying, John, go away, get educated, get your degree. So bachelor's was only in my thinking. And I wanted to come back and do better than what my parents did, because that was their push to get me away to get educated. During that time of getting my bachelor's, on a vacation after that, I met Brenton Burgess. Never knew this man before. And in the conversation, met him in DC. In the conversation, he said he had his master's degree.
Right.
So he just opened up the world to me just by saying, I have a master's degree. I saw him as a Black man. I'm a Black man. I said, oh, it's not out of my reach.
Sure. That's right.
So meeting him was the impetus for me to go get, first realizing I could do it.
Right.
And then going and being successful to get my master's degree. So you two, John, you have your doctorate. Shayna, you're working on, you're close to it, right there on the road. In our closing moments, take this time to just encourage those of us who may be thinking or may not even have thought of the doctorate, and what does that mean? Is it just another degree? Take it a little further than what you said earlier, or is it more that you would encourage us to seek after?
Well, I would like to start off, Dean, by saying that I don't necessarily want to limit education to the attainment of degrees.
Absolutely.
Right? Because there are different ways in which people can learn, and different credentials that people can obtain that don't necessarily have to be to meet the requirements for a degree. You know what I mean? So I want to put that out there.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you are interested in the doctoral process, is not for everybody. Not for everybody. So we're not saying that everybody should get a PhD, because it's not. Because with a PhD comes a certain level of responsibility, right? The goal of obtaining a PhD is for you to answer a question. So it has to be a burning question within you that you want to answer, or a problem that you want to solve. If it's not burning, then you're going to have a problem, because you're not going to finish the course of study.
Yes.
Right? My burning question was, I wanted to know the academic and social success of Black males in education. I wanted to know how successful they were. So I went along the doctoral journey to get that question answered, because it was a burning question.
Wow.
Answers.
Yeah.
So if it's not a burning desire, I would say that it's probably something that you want to reconsider, because maybe your motive for really doing it is not pure. If you really, really want to answer a question, I would encourage people who have the wherewithal, the academic stamina to pursue it, because when you come on the other side of the journey, it's just phenomenal. It's a world that opens up your mind to just embracing this whole essence of life, a lifelong journey of becoming a learner. So it just really expands you. So I encourage it. If that's something, you have a question that you want to answer, you know, I really support persons going along the doctoral journey. Yeah.
And I concur with John. It is not for everybody. And traditional education is not the answer. I see it as a tool, right? It is the highest level academia that gives me access, puts me in positions of power with people, right? So I can better serve my community. Right. So to me, it is just a tool. And so when John talked about the burning question, it is like the program, the end of it is to complete a dissertation. And in this dissertation, it's like you're going on this journey. You have this phenomenon and you're trying to solve it. And so everybody adds to the piece of solving. So he talked about, his was about the academic success. I'm still trying to navigate and contour mine, but it's on the Black Mosaic Church and the leadership advancement of Black women, right? And so that's burning for me, because I grew up in the church, and we know that the church is full of gender inequity, right? And so what happens to people like me, that you will be born into a denomination that doesn't believe that women should be a reverend? Why? Right? So that's my question. And so I'm on the journey to understand the rich narrative of other people who've gone through this way before me, and to see what the journey was like for them, and to collaborate all of this information and synthesize it and see what the similarities are, what the differences are, where are the gaps, and what can we do to help move this on a little further. Because if we think about it, in our community as African descent, 85% of the church are made up of women, and less than 14% have leadership position. There's a problem, if I say so myself. And so I'm on this quest. That's a burning question inside of me to answer. And so how will my study add to this, right? And so I can say to another Black girl and a little Black boy, right? When you're thinking about things, we are all equal. Now, society may say this according to roles, but it is how you treat me. And if you have this advantage, are you aware of this privilege that you have? And are you using it only to help you and your few friends and your family? You know, that cronyism and that nepotism that runs rapid on the island of Bermuda. You know what I'm talking about. Or are we going to open the doors to invite other people in? Right? So that's what it is like for me. And so for those who don't go the traditional the route, I just say excellence. It is about excellence. And whatever is excellence for you, do it with all you have.
Awesome. Excellence. Do it with right? All that you have.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for coming on the show tonight. I'm sorry, Michelle, go right. You do yours. You do it.
What am I doing?
Oh, thank
No, what I appreciate about the conversation is that you guys brought it to another level. And I really appreciate your contribution to the show and your contribution to society. And what I appreciate about John is I appreciate your thoughtfulness. I appreciate your insight. I appreciate those things about you. And Shayna, I appreciate about those things in addition to your courage and your fierceness. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate you guys, the value that you put in, not just education, but in human life.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thanks for having us, guys. Appreciate you.
And Dean, if I may say this, that John has been a supporter of me 100%. And so again, in our community, like we're together, right? Excellent. And so that's another thing that I think we need to, that's education, right? Like it is not women, we're on this side and men, we're on that side. According to the way God did it, it is for balance, right? Yeah. Because he'll say, bring that estrogen down, bring that stuff down, right?
But that's the other thing that I don't know if people, but I know that's another thing that we never really went into, but the fact that you two complement each other so well. And the fact that you would say, no, not too many people will come on anything live and say, you know what, I disagree with you.
Well, after 28 years.
I love it.
Oh my God, but he puts me in my place all the time. Like people wake me up at 2 o'clock to put me in my place.
Yeah, we have some hearty discussions.
People have to see that there is a healthy respect. Respect is healthy, I think, but there's a respect between the both of you. It's you don't make each other small in any way.
Right.
That guy right there, that's a great guy. I'm serious. Like I learned from him. I said to him the other day, because I supervise people, and I try not to say I supervise, but I said to him the other day, I find myself imitating some of the ways that you lead. And I just love how he leads, and I want to be that type of leader. So he teaches me all the time, and I'm willing to learn because he gets success. He has good outcomes. And isn't that what we want? We want people to feel good about what they do. We want them to help our children so we can have good members of society. Isn't that it?
But you know, I'm going to do this because I know you two have thought about it. So I know I'm not putting you on the spot. So Shayna, 3 things that you appreciate about John, and John, 3 things that you appreciate about Shayna.
Oh, wow. I appreciate that John has humor no matter what happens. I appreciate that. Sometimes it's inappropriate, but I appreciate it. And then what else I appreciate? He has a strong will. People don't see that, but they don't know him. He is like still water. Like when I tell you he goes deep, he goes really, really deep. And he is one of the most caring human beings I have ever met.
And 3 things I admire about Shayna is, I guess we're complete opposites, I guess, in a way, is her level of courage and fierceness. This woman will tackle any issue, anybody, anything in a very graceful and dainty way, and her point will be made. A lot of class, but you know exactly how she feels about the issue at hand. She's very courageous. That's number 1. Number 2, she's very smart. You know, always reading a book, always reading some type of abstract and pulling something from it and saying, hey, did you know? So it keeps me on my A game. Very smart. And 3, very family oriented. She has a high love for family. She loves family, and family just being people with whom she connects. People don't know, but Michelle's my cousin. Unofficially, she's our family. You know, cousin.
She has a room in our house.
Yes, exactly. She has a room at our house in Charlotte, North Carolina. Absolutely. Shayna's a family person. I really love that. So
Thank you, John.
thank you, babes.
Awesome. And we love you both. It has been a pleasure having you on here today. Thank you for taking the conversation the way that you took it. Teachers are talking about more than, what we see here on the radio. Oh, Absolutely. We're not on radio. On Facebook Live. On Facebook Live. I still am getting used to that. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Bye, guys.
Power to our people. Hold up the power.
That's
right. God is all. God is all.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Don't get anywhere yet, guys. Don't get anywhere yet. We're just going to close out the show. Go ahead, Dean.
Yes, but before we close out the show, Michelle, we have to pay tribute to the passing of Dr. Eva Hudson. I'm going to read an excerpt that was put in by the PLP, so I'll mention PLP in that a little bit. Dr. Hudson was a fierce advocate for racial equality in Bermuda. She was also a fierce critic of organizations and governments that she felt did not do enough to advance the cause of racial equality. This advocacy often resulted in her being targeted for being too racial or too controversial. However, in 2020, locally and globally, we still see evidence of the racial scourge to which she often spoke. The officers and members of the PLP remain committed to equality and ensuring that race is not a barrier to success in Bermuda. As an educator and author, she took the opportunity to tell the stories of racial inequality in Bermuda and educate her readers. Dr. Hudson was educated at the Queen's University, where she received her undergraduate degree and then subsequently received her diploma in education and honors degree in geography from London University. She taught at the Berkeley Institute and was the first president of the Amalgamated Bermuda Union of Teachers. Dr. Hudson also studied at Columbia University, where she received 2 master's degrees and then her PhD in African history and Black American history. Dr. Hudson was the author of the acclaimed book, Second Class Citizens, First Class Man, which spoke to the political and social conditions in Bermuda in the 1950s and 1960s. Dr. Hudson's advocacy to address racial problems motivated the United Bermuda Party government to establish CURE, the Commission for Unity and Racial Equality, in the early 1990s. It would be merged with the Human Rights Commission in 2010. While Dr. Hudson achieved much, it is clear she also sacrificed much by being an outspoken critic and campaigner for racial and social equality. It should have been much easier for her had she complied with the status quo, but that's not what warriors do. We celebrate the contributions that the Venerable Dr. Eva Hudson made to our island home, and we celebrate her life and all she gave to Bermuda. We join her family in mourning her loss. We send our condolences to her family and friends. Sleep in peace, Dr. Hudson. From Teacher Talk, we want to send our condolences to the family. We want to thank you for tuning in today. Michelle, I hope that's something we have said. We'll have people talking until we are back here again. But until then, I want you to have a good night and encourage our young people to listen.
Yeah.
And a teacher talks.
That's right.